Hello, everyone. Today I'm speaking with Guillermo Sanchez Chao, a partner at Chavez Ruiz Zamarripa, a law firm headquartered in Mexico City that specializes in customs and tax matters. Guillermo is serving as co-chair of the International Trade and Customs Law Committee of the International Bar Association. He and his firm recently published a book related to the USMCA, or the TMEC as it is known in Mexico. And today we are speaking about the USMCA, which has been in effect since July 1, 2020, and about a potential new customs agency in Mexico. So Guillermo, the USMCA is now over a year old. Have your clients had any challenges stemming from USMCA or TMEC?
Yes. Hello, Dana. First of all, thank you for the invitation and thank you for the call. Yes, they have. I think their main concern is the certificate of origin itself. We have to have in mind that Mexico legal system is full of formalities, no? So we used to have, according to the previous NAFTA, we used to have a format for certification origin. And the big change here is that we don't have anymore any kind of format. So you could certify in the invoice, or you could certify anywhere as long as you comply with the specific requirements that are stated in the treaty. So the point and the questions that we have been hearing from our clients, it's the way that I'm receiving the certificate of origin, are they complying with all the requirements so that it wouldn't be invalidated by the Mexican authority? Has been very aggressive with the origin audits, with the origin verifications. And they have been collected a lot of duties due to the fact that they have rejected the certificate of origin or the certification. So I think that's the reason why we have received a lot of questions related to the certification or to the certificate itself, no?
Yeah, do you have any advice for people who are dealing with the certificate of origin issue and maybe not passing the audits? Do you have any advice for them?
Well, the advice would be from a U.S. perspective, since they would be the ones who are certifying, the Mexican are the importers of records. I think it's very important for them to understand that Mexico the formality for the Mexican authorities, it's very important. So they really need to make sure that they are complying with all the requirements. If they do not comply, the impact would be that the Mexican importers would have a liability of the import duty that they didn't pay. On the other hand, when the Mexican are exporting, I think that shouldn't be an issue, rather than only make sure that they are complying, Mexican products are complying with the applicable rules of origin. And we need to remember that the changes with respect to rules of origin, we could focus in 4 different sectors: the automotive, textiles, chemicals, and electronics. No, so the big changes in the rules of origin with respect to TMEC or to the USMCA.
Yeah, thank you for that. So at Miller and Chevalier, we've been fielding a lot of questions about forced labor. And as you know, USMCA Article 23.6 includes a requirement that parties to the USMCA, so US, Canada, and Mexico, prohibit the importation of goods made with forced labor. The US already has such a prohibition, which is 19 U.S.C. 1307. It's been in place for decades, although changes to the law in 2015 have made it much easier to enforce, and there has in fact been much more enforcement in the last few years. Does Mexico currently have a law prohibiting imports made with forced labor?
We as such, we don't have a law. What we have, it's this new treaty, and in the treaty we have the rapid response labor mechanism. No, that's what we have. So from a legal point of view, since that mechanism, the rapid response labor mechanism has been included in the USMCA, we could say that we already have that mechanism in our legislation, not in our local law, but rather in the treaty. That's important to have on mind. And also very important, I think this will become a very, very important mechanism in the near future. We already have one experience. The Mexican government has initiated a procedure with a US automotive Mexican company. Fortunately, they resolved the case without having to deny origin to those products when brought into the States. But this mechanism, and we have to understand that from a labor point of view, the unions in Mexico we have strong unions, and there for the last years, there has been a lot of violations to the union rights. So if those violations keep on going, I would say then the products that are manufactured within those facilities, they would be able to lose the origin when being exported into the state. This I would say, Dana, this is one of our main concerns, and this is where a lot of clients are asking questions. And I think this is going to be a headache for the near future, I believe. So if companies are not aware of this part.
Yeah, that was the next thing I wanted to ask you about, and it sounds like you anticipate that more cases will be filed under the rapid response labor mechanism of the USMCA.
Yes, and let me tell you something. I think there's specific sectors that we should be alert or aware of. The automotive sector is one of them, as well as chemicals. Mm-hmm. The exportation of automotive parts or trucks or vehicles and of chemicals products to the States from Mexico, that's an important amount. And those as well are important unions that we have here in Mexico, no? So we have to remember that this mechanism, this labor mechanism, in a way is trying to protect the labor of Mexico, but also, to say it clear, it's tried to bring more manufacture of these products into the States. No, so I think the US is going to be pushing hard this topic, and I think that as any company that has the minimum thought that they could be violating any union right, that would be a possibility for losing the origin for the product when exported into the States. And that's, I do believe that in automotive sector and in others as chemicals, we are going to have a lot of cases related to this mechanism.
Yeah, it's a pretty serious consequence to lose the origin status and therefore have to pay duties when the products are imported into the U.S. rather than having them be free under USMCA is a pretty drastic consequence. And as I understand it, it can be, over in a period of time for whenever the violation was happening.
And the main concern is that this mechanism could be start when the U.S. government or when the U.S. has any doubt that a violation is taking place. So any employee that sends a communication to the States saying that there's a violation, that's an easy invitation of the States to start this procedure. No? So I think we are going to be facing kind of a whistleblower from the employees to the United States about this violation of rights with respect to the unions.
Excellent. Yeah. Anything else we should know about the rapid response labor mechanism in USMCA?
Nothing more in specifically, rather than just being alert of that part, I would say, Dana.
I wanted to switch gears again a little bit just to ask you about, we've heard that there is potentially going to be a new customs agency in Mexico. And so we wanted to know, let's see, that so the Mexican Customs Authority has traditionally been a department within the tax agency, if I understand correctly. However, on July 14th of this year, a presidential decree announced that a new customs agency could be created once all the necessary legal reforms are complete. Do you have any thoughts of this? Do you think that this will come to fruition, will actually happen?
Well, this is a reality. No, it has already been published in the official Gazette.
Okay.
This is a reality. They are only the only thing pending is that the ruling which states the rules how to act of this agency need to be published in the following 6 months or so. So that's going to happen. No. Most likely, I believe we're going to have this agency by the end of this year, or at the latest, beginning the following year. I think that there's an important issue to understand, Dana. First of all, as you said it correctly, customs was under the umbrella of the of the Mexican IRS. So we the Minister of Finance, and under the Minister of Finance, we have the IRS, which was an independent entity. Now, what they're doing is they're taking away from the Mexican IRS, they're taking away the customs activity. And one important thing is Mexican politicians, they were discussing whether leave it beneath the Minister of Finance, take it to the General Attorney Office, or rather to take it to the Secretary of Government. So that discussion was very important as well, to understand what's the commitment of this new customs agency. Finally, this new customs agency, it's going to be an independent agency beneath the Minister of Finance. So beneath the Minister of Finance, we're going to have two different agencies, the IRS, the Mexican IRS, and the customs agency. And because it depends from the Minister of Finance, we do believe that they're going to have an important role for trying to collect as much duties as possible. That's going to be one important role of this customs agency. I think one is going to be, they're going to be fighting corruption and they're going to be fighting smuggling. But on the other hand, I think companies should be alert that they would try to collect as much as possible. The other thing that it's important, it's in the decree that was published in the official Gazette, it is stated that they want to hire a lot of militaries or army people to do the activity, no? So there's kind of a concern that that our customs houses will start to become kind of a military activity, no? How strong will the military activity would be? We don't know, but in written it says that the function of the customs agency is going to be handled in part by ex-army people or ex-military people, no? So that's important. Bottom line, I think we should be, or companies should be aware that we are going to be facing a strong customs activity by the new customs agency.
So it sounds like U.S. companies who export goods to Mexico should be aware that there's been or will be a change, and that possibly greater enforcement that could result in higher duties for those goods is something that they should be aware of.
Yeah, right. And let me perhaps more on detail. I think they should be aware of two things. First of all, compliance. Because if your compliance is not properly done, you could have a tax or customs liability, a tax credit, an important tax credit. That's one thing. And the other thing is, besides the compliance, I think your supply chain activity needs to be quite accurate. If it's not clear, your product, your merchandise could be stopped in the border and could be remain there for a couple of days or months. So you don't want to have a tax liability because of compliance, and you don't want your merchandise to be stopped at the border. So a strong recommendation would be that companies need to work in their best practices governance of trade, customs, and supply chain. I believe that's a good recommendation for the companies.
Excellent. Well, Guillermo, we very much appreciate your Mexican customs law expertise. This has been really interesting, and thank you for taking time to share some of your thoughts on these recent developments with us.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you, Miller Chevalier, for the invitation.